Hey everyone, thank you for coming so much. We are meeting next week, and we meet every week, every single Monday. Whether we have a series or whether we don't have a series, it's every single Monday. We find when we just do it every week, it's so much easier than remembering it's the second and the fourth Mondays, except in leap years when it's the second and third, only for the first half of the year. It's too complicated. And we have a wonderful evening planned for you next week, and we hope to see you. As Carol said, whether you can be here or not, I would say, oh, just come. It will be so good. It will be so good. We try not to disappoint. So, tonight, we're on week 12 of A Way of Life That Works, and we have spent the last 11 weeks talking about the road that we take, the way in which we walk, that allows us to begin to remember who and whose we are. It has to do with planting yourself in the bigger picture of who you are, of grounding yourself in what is real, and in making the choice of who it is you're going to know yourself to be. And we're not pretending or positive thinking our way into, well, I want to be this and I want to be that. It has nothing to do with that. It's about remembering your true identity and choosing that true identity to take with you into your day. Because your true identity and your false one are worlds apart. Your true identity empowers you. It strengthens you. It strengthens your body. It heals your body. Your false identity fractures you. It separates you from the power that dwells within, and it leaves you feeling hopeless, and it leaves you feeling helpless, and it leaves you feeling so bad about yourself, and your body follows suit. These whole 12 weeks are about the fact that the way of life that works begins within us. It doesn't begin when we get everything that we want. We know that. It begins when we remember everything that we are. That's where a way of life that works begins. So in the old tale called The Nightingale by Hans Christian Andersen, there was an emperor in China who had the most beautiful kingdom, and he had the most beautiful gardens, and people would come from all around the world just to see the gardens that he put together. They were that exotic and that exquisite, just exquisite. However, in the gardens, there was just beauty cultivated by the head gardener, just beauty everywhere. But if you followed the gardens, outside the gardens, there were woods. And further outside the woods, there was the sea. But out inside of the gardens, in the woods, there was a nightingale. And the beauty of this nightingale's song was such that even after a day's work, a fisherman would stop on his way home after his 14-hour day. He would stop and he would listen to the beautiful song of the nightingale. It was that beautiful. And if he came by the next night and slowed down on his walk home, he would hear that nightingale sing, and he would say every single night the same thing he said the night before, which, oh my God, this is so beautiful. It was beautiful night after night. Poets wrote poems about this nightingale. Authors wrote books about the beauty of it. It was that exquisite. Obviously, it was a matter of time till the emperor heard that there was something going on in his kingdom that he didn't know about. People were talking about not him, but the nightingale. So it was like, what's up with this? Let me hear it. And he started asking everybody in his kingdom where it was, and not one of them knew where it was. So he sent them out all over his grounds, all over the kingdom to find the nightingale. And nobody in the kingdom could find it except the poor servant girl that worked in the kitchen, who would go every evening to drop some scraps of food off from her mom, who lived by the sea. And she would stop in the woods, and just like the poor fisherman, this poor girl would stop, and she would listen, and it would comfort her. So she told the attendants where to find it, and they bring, of course, they go and they catch the nightingale, bring it back to the kingdom, put it up one night for the king to hear, and the king says, sing, and the nightingale begins to sing a song. So beautiful, which of course others have heard and written poems and books about. He hears it for the first time and his tears flow, and he wasn't that kind of a guy. You don't get to be a king by having that kind of a soft heart, but it melted something hard in his heart and his tears flowed, and he was overwhelmed at its first song. And he said to the nightingale, you tell me what you want, I will give you anything that you want. And it said, your tears are what I want. They're my reward. I'll take those. And there began this beautiful relationship between this king and this beautiful nightingale, which, admittedly, when he saw it, it's not like he was ecstatic when he saw it, because the nightingale was like, it looked like a common bird. It didn't look like it had any beautiful feathers, like a beautiful parrot. It was just a gray, common-looking bird, but he could not deny the beauty of the sound. And he listened to this sound, and it was so beautiful. And night after night, he would bring everybody in court together to hear the song of the nightingale, until one day a present arrives at the front door of the kingdom. Or would that be, if you have a kingdom, the front gates? I don't know. Never having had a kingdom, I don't know what the front is. The front situation. You know, when I lived in the Hamptons, it was a situation that you enter into, and bushes and rhododendrons and tall trees and stones and stone dogs, and it's a whole thing till you finally get to the two gay men who live in that house, you know? So they get to the door of the kingdom, and this big crate comes in. They bring the big crate into the kingdom. They open it up in front of the Emperor of China, and there is a small little box. They open up the box, and there is this beautiful replica of the nightingale that they had been listening to, with a little card that said, the Emperor of Japan offers the Emperor of China a very poor imitation of his nightingale. Well, the nightingale that the Emperor of Japan sent, the fake nightingale, was covered in diamonds, covered in rubies. And that night they had a whole big party to celebrate this, to hear the song of this beautiful jewel-encrusted bird. They wind it up, its diamond tail starts wagging, and it sings a song so perfect in every way. It was a song that the nightingale had sung. Of the many songs, the nightingale every night sang a different song, and they were all beautiful. This bird sang one song, but it sang it perfectly. No fault could be found. And while it didn't make anybody cry, it absolutely, people marveled at the perfection and the correctness of this, and the dazzling beauty of the jewels on it. They were absolutely blown away. This is from the book Dying to Be Me by Anita Morjani. She was a little girl, and she overheard this conversation between, she said, my mother and her friend. Her mother's friend says, and keep in mind, they lived in Hong Kong, which was peopled with Chinese. That was the population, Chinese population. She herself was Hindu. She was raised Hindu. So they spoke that language, Sindhi, in their language, in their home, I mean. And they practiced as Hindus. But she was sent to a British school with other British children who were British expats. So she had three cultures weaving at the same time, but Hindu was what she grew up as. And she overheard this conversation between her mother and her friend, and her mother's friend said, so were you disappointed that your second child was a girl when she was born, meaning Anita? Were you disappointed your second child was a girl when she was born? And Anita said, I felt a sense of anxiety rise within me as I waited. My mother's response, no, of course not. My mother said, I love my daughter, but girls are such a problem, especially when they grow up. With girls, you have to make sure they don't get spoiled. Otherwise, they won't get a good husband, and the amount of dowry that's required to get a good husband is rising with each passing year. You can't predict the future, my mother said. Every child, girl or boy, brings with them their own fate. Well, I'm happy for you then, her friends said, that you have at least 2 sons, the woman said proudly. And even in my young mind, I was able to detect the sense of achievement she felt when she made that statement. And later, when my mother and I were alone together, I asked, is it true that girls are a problem? No, she said, of course not, and pulled me close and gave me a hug. And at that moment, I recall thinking, I never want to be a problem to my parents just because I'm a girl. I don't want them to ever wish I was born a boy. I have been doing sessions at the level of the soul for most of my adult life. I am so much older than I appear. It is amazing. You put together some MAC makeup, a great hairdresser, black clothes that fit you well and hide all the imperfections from the naked eye. You put on the tallest heels you can find, and you have created an optical illusion that will baffle even the most discerning audience member. Right? I have been doing soul sessions for so long, and what the interesting thing about your soul, everybody's soul, because I've worked with every different kind of person you can imagine, believers, unbelievers, women, men, teenagers, elderly, all faiths, no faiths, Americans, every continent, coming from everywhere. It doesn't make a difference where on this globe somebody will end up on my couch and end up asking the question, why am I stuck? What is wrong with my life? It used to work, and it doesn't work now. And the harder I work at it, the more it's not working. What is wrong with me? What is wrong with my body that I have gotten this illness? How is it possible that I ended up this sick? I'm not the type of person who even thinks bad thoughts or does bad things. I'm a good person. How could this life, how could this guy leave me? How could this happen to a person like me? We land in a place in our life where we don't have the answer to a question, and the soul will invariably do something that is the same thing in each case. It will take us to a moment in time, the exact moment in time. Your soul will take you to the exact, precise moment in time. At that moment, Anita said, I recall thinking. It takes you to the exact moment in time when you made a decision that starts out with the words, from now on. The moment we make that decision, and from her from now on was, I never want to be a problem to my parents just because I'm a girl. From now on, I don't ever want them to ever wish I was born a boy. And you know what? That's great thinking. Nobody will argue with that. That's smart. I mean, when you're 6 years old to have figured that out, kudos to you, because that's excellent. There are some kids that, aren't toilet trained by 6, but at 6, you've totally figured something out, which is, my parents don't want this. Whatever this is, whatever this package of me is, or this thing about me, or this energy of me, or this adjective of me, or this quality of me, they don't want this. So I'm going to take it away and not give it to them so they can be happy. It's pure genius. But at that moment, the reason the soul takes us to this place when we're asking a question about where we are now, 20 years later or 50 years later, what does that have to do with the price of, how does that saying go? What? Tea in China. What? Yeah, right. Yes. Anybody want to take public speaking lessons from me? Right. From the what? The tea in what? The tea in China, or the price. I never even used that phrase. That's so funny. It comes up now to embarrass myself in front of a whole group of people. What does that have to do with the price of tea in China? I said confidently. And what it has to do with the price of tea in China is at that moment we make the decision that something about our true self, our whole self, is not wanted, is not liked, is not loved, is not welcome. And at that moment, a divide happens in our life. Shh, quietly. Not a word is spoken. Nothing is said. You would not even know it happens. That's how deeply in our consciousness that choice is made. That wise choice for survival is made. And shh. We make that decision quietly, whispering inside of our subconscious mind that from this point forward, I will no longer be my true self. Now I will become something other than my true self that they want. This nightingale, the song of this nightingale, everybody stopped and everybody's heart was moved and everybody was brought to tears. And what are tears? Tears is a place in us where something is melting, where an opening happens and life is moving through. We can feel our aliveness in that moment, whether we believe or not, or all that shit doesn't make a difference. It has gone straight through to the heart of the matter, and we are feeling the living streams, the living waters of life move through us, and it's undeniable because down our faces running tears. We walk away from that beautiful song of our true self and we decide we're going to choose the fake, the artificial nightingale. And it's so smart because the artificial nightingale, it's covered in diamond and ruby. So when people look at it, it's like, oh my God, how beautiful. Right? The fact that it can only sing one song, it's okay because it's so beautiful to look at and it has a tail, but the tail is made of diamonds, for heaven's sake. Who would not like to see a wagging tail made of diamonds? Who would not like to have a wagging tail made of diamonds? It's the one time I'd say, I'll take a tail if it's made of diamonds. Then my mortgage can be paid off and that'll be one less thing to worry about. It can only sing one song, but it does it perfectly. When we make that choice from now on to put something in hiding, we put in hiding that piece of our true self that appears to be unwanted by our parents. This is her true self, the part they don't want. They don't want a girl, even though her mother assured us, of course, we love you the way you are, of course. But she already got that feeling from a neighbor, not even her parent, from a neighbor, that there was pride in having a boy and no pride in having a girl. So she took a piece of herself, she put it into hiding. We take a piece of ourselves, we put it into hiding, and whether we remember or not, we do this. This is the game. This is how we go through survival. It's the game of life, and it's where actually the game begins when you want to search for what's not looking in your life. Look for where the game began, because the moment you became artificial, and what is that? It's called a mask. What do they call it psychologically? They call it your persona. They call it the personality with which you lead from. You go out into the world and you put on this shiny, jewel-encrusted personality so people can see the fabulousness of you, right? And they're going to love it. And what happened to this bird? This jewel-encrusted bird from the Emperor of Japan that was perfect in every way, that could only sing one song. They gave it a special title, and they gave it a beautiful pillow to sit on, and they put a beautiful little thing around its neck, and they had 12 attendants walking around with it and holding it up. It got all of the riches, it got all of the praise, it got everything it wanted that we want. We put on this artificial facade. We hide away our true self thinking it's common. People won't love it as much because in the beginning of time, they didn't. We didn't do it. out of ignorance. We did it actually out of great wisdom. We put a piece of ourselves in hiding to survive and have our parents love us and lavish us with the kind of attention that we would get if we were a boy, or the kind of attention we would be if we were the kind of child our parent really wanted. Maybe quieter, maybe louder, maybe more bold, maybe more businesslike, whatever it might be, whatever it is we think our parents wanted, we put on the persona, that jewel-encrusted persona, and we pass for a living nightingale, but we're not living anymore. We're living behind a mask. And we think, hey, it's going to get me through childhood. It's not a bad idea. And you know what? Getting through childhood, it's not a bad idea. It's an excellent idea. The problem only comes later in life, because wearing a mask wears out. Wearing a mask is not meant to last a lifetime. It is actually built with an expiration date inside of it and a little chip that says, this is going to wear out on your 32nd birthday, where your life is going to go to shit from that point forward, right? And you're thinking, what I do wrong? We never think to look at the mask we're wearing. We look at our boss, we look at our wife, we look at our husband, we look at our ass, we look at everything. But we do not look at what the actuality is, which is this mask is not built to last. It has an expiration date that says this mask is to get you through your childhood. It was not intended to live through and with your entire life. Its purpose has been served. And we need to look at the place where we are out of alignment with our true self. And here's what it sounds like. Oh man, if people see the real me, they're not going to like me. If people know I'm gay, they're not going to like me. If I tell people the truth, they're not going to like me. If I tell them what I really feel, they're not going to like me. If I do this, my family's not going to like me. If I do that, my family's not going to like me. My friends are not going to like me. If I move, the people I'm with are not going to like me. If I tell my husband this, that, or the other, he's going to leave me. It always ends with, we're not going to be liked. We're not going to be loved. We're going to lose something we have if our true self comes out of hiding. And here is the problem. As we are saying all of those things, our body, our mind, our strength, our life force is weakening. We're getting weaker, not stronger. We're getting darker, not lighter. We're getting smaller, not bigger. Why? Because we're hiding behind something artificial. It can only sing one song. Now, here's the interesting thing. Halfway, I don't know, it was in the first year, every night the court comes around and all the attendants and all the wonderful people and the emperor, and they listen to the one song. It's one song, but it's a good song. We've got a mask, and you know what? We're so good at our mask. We are as good as that fake nightingale, that artificial nightingale. They're listening to the same song night after night. You'd think boring after a while, wouldn't you? I know the song, I know the notes, and yet, night after night, they listen to the same song. When we're behind the mask, our true spontaneous self can't come out. We are literally singing the same song. And if the same song is, I'm going to be a good girl, or I'm going to be a good boy, it's a certain type of song. I'm not going to upset the apple cart. It's a certain type of song. I don't want to make anybody mad. I don't want to tell anybody the truth. For me, my from now on came when my dad said one line. And he had a very hard life. Both my parents did a very hard upbringing in the war in Europe. Very, very, I can't even imagine what it is to have lived the kind of life they did, losing almost everybody. And my dad said this line, do not ever do anything to shame us. Now, on one level, you think, wow, you want to send your kid off with like a big, bold statement of go conquer the world. August, you can be president. You could be an astronaut. You could be anything you want. But what he said was, just don't shame us, whatever you do. That was the big send-off line. So what you do when you hear something like that is you say, oh, I get it. You don't want me to shame you, not because you're a bad man. It has nothing to do with that. Or bad parents, has nothing to do with that. You don't want me to shame you because you don't want any attention to come back on you, because attention has always meant negative attention. And when attention came on you as a Jew in Europe, trust me, you don't want that attention. So do not do anything to bring attention to us, because it won't end well. I get that now. When you're young, you don't get that. You take it and you say, okay, from now on, I'm going to take whatever I have to say that's truthful, and I'm going to swallow it. And so I swallowed it and began smoking at the very young age of 12 and a half, 13 years old. That's young to start smoking like an animal the way I started smoking. I didn't just start smoking like, oh, I'll have a cigarette once a week and won't that be nice after school. I began smoking as an addict begins smoking. You are eating them, you are pushing them in your mouth, and you cannot stop smoking fast. I started that way. Why? Because in order to hold to my decision from now on I'll do nothing, Anita said, that will make my parents upset that I'm a girl. What that means, you got to put something in hiding. And the thing you put in hiding is not a small thing. It's a part of you that is you. It is the living nightingale, your true self. And for me, who ended up discovering my destiny was a minister, telling the truth was part of the gift I was born with. Being intuitive and being sensitive and be able to see the truth. You get that when you're at a young age. You don't get that when you get ordained. You get a piece of paper, it's like, poof, here are your gifts, right? You don't get that. You get your gifts when you're a kid, and you can sense when things are out of alignment, when things are true, when they're not true. That's when it happens. And I took that whole part of my nature, put it into hiding, the part of me that was sensitive, that was intuitive, that saw things other people didn't see, that knew things other people didn't know. That was my gift. I put my gift in hiding. She put who she was in hiding and almost walked down the aisle in an arranged marriage with a man she did not love and did not want and knew she never would love, hiding behind a mask. And look what she says. And she's speaking for all of us. She says, everything I was doing up to that point, the way I was dressing, the way I was behaving, was an act. It was all an act. I'd never truly be what they wanted me to be. I'd spent my entire life trying to be someone I wasn't, and I'd always fall short. I hadn't even told my parents because I didn't want them to think of me as a problem. So she goes forward and lets her parents dictate to her how she is to live and who she is to marry and how it's to be. And she knows that she's not that type of person. She wanted to have a job. She wanted to go travel. She wanted to be her own lady. She didn't want to be forced into a marriage and have kids with a guy that wasn't really her guy. And so at the last minute, she did something so outrageous. Her living nightingale broke out from behind the screen and called off the marriage. And then, man, did she take flack for that. Look what happens. The diamond-encrusted artificial nightingale gets a lot of attention. People love that. We love that. Here's what happened when her living nightingale poked out when we decide to do something for ourselves. You know we're talking about being ourselves. We're talking about doing something for ourselves. The reason we hide behind the mask to this day is we know there are repercussions. Repercussions. Her entire community began to spread rumors about her. Relatives, family members, others in the community were saddened and angry and disappointed to hear the news of calling off her engagement. They came to see me, attempting to persuade me, go through with the wedding. It's normal to feel this way. Afterwards, it'll be better. Go through with it. If you break the commitment, no one in our culture is going to want to marry you. No one. You're not good enough. You're spoiled. You're not domesticated. Your parents brought you up wrong. You have too high of an opinion of you. Why is it always, she said, that I was apologizing for just being me? Why me? Why me? What's wrong with me? They tried to get the nightingale and they tried to get the artificial bird together to sing a duet. Right? And they're looking around for the living nightingale, looking around for it, and it had already flown out the window. It knew what it had to do. It wasn't wanted here. Once we see that dazzling persona and we figure out we can be what people want us to be, and all the neighbors and friends and sisters and brothers are going to say, good girl, good for you. We love you. You did the right thing. That's good to put your dreams in hiding. That would hurt your parents. That would hurt your friends. That would hurt your husband. Take your dreams. Everybody has to do it. Don't ask for too much. When we know that we're going to get that kind of response. Who wouldn't choose the artificial nightingale? Who wouldn't choose to wear the mask for as long as possible until life pressed us, until life insisted we take the mask off, because we think we can slide by life just wearing that mask all the time, and who's going to notice and who's going to care? So what if I don't do my dreams? So what if I don't tell the truth? You know, so what if she marries and she doesn't do what it is she was born to do? So what? That's what we say. It's just a dream. Who cares? It'll go away. I'll stop thinking about it. But we don't. Our body doesn't stop thinking about our purpose or our dream. Our body doesn't stop thinking. Our soul does not for a second stop thinking about why you're here and what you're here to do. Not for a second, not for a bloody second does it forget. And there comes a day of reckoning that is gorgeous. And the line in the Old Testament puts it this way: Spirit, life, God gives you chance after chance to live in the light of life. We're going to get many chances to do it, but these chances are going to feel like kicks in the head or kicks in the asses, and we're going to hate them, and we're going to say, why me? These why me's are life telling you, come out of hiding. The nightingale was gone, the living nightingale, but here's the problem. Within the year, the artificial nightingale broke down. For us, it's 10, 20 years, sometimes 30. Some of us are good and can eke it all the way out into our 50s, you know. We are not coming out, damn it, no matter who drags me out. It ain't going to happen. You add an addiction in there and you prolong your need to come out of hiding. That, by the way, is the beauty of addiction. Addiction allows us to stay in hiding until we feel safe to come out of hiding as our true self. That is my understanding and belief about what addiction really is. That's why it's not a moral issue. Moral has nothing to do with it. It's safety. Am I safe to come out of hiding? The bird breaks down. They call in the music master. Music master says, it's worn out. It's just worn out. So if you want to keep it, you can, but it's only going to be able to play that one song, which is beautiful, once a year. And why do people love that and are willing to accept just once a year? Because out of the mouth of the artificial bird, you always knew the song you're going to get. I mean, think of how comforting that is. You don't open your mouth and say something that's going to upset somebody. You don't open your mouth and something comes out and everybody goes, what? Is that what you really think? I don't think I like you. When you open your mouth and behind your mask, you got one song, you know the words, you know what it looks like, whatever it is. For me, for her, it was being a people pleaser. You always did what the people around you needed and wanted you to do, so you got their approval and didn't upset them. Because the last thing you want to do when you have fragile parents is upset them. They've been upset enough. So my job became, how do I protect them? And that's an honorable job. But at some point, we have to put down the job of our childhood that enabled us to survive, because it's going to wear out. The bird couldn't sing anymore. We can't live our old life in this small little place behind the mask, trying to not let anybody see who we actually are. It wears us down. We wear out. Our body wears out. And Anita Moore-Johnny, she ends up, after 4 years at the end of her short little life, with fourth stage lymphatic cancer, in the hospital, rushed into the hospital after 4 agonizing years of her body being ravaged by this illness, because it was time for her to come out of hiding and discover who she truly was. Now keep in mind, this is not to say, oh, anybody who has an illness, this is exactly what it is. All she's saying is this is her story. All I ever say is this is my story. We take these stories in these rooms, and then you bring it home and see which piece of the story applies to you. This is not a blanket statement, all illness is this. This is her telling her story, that after years of saying what's wrong with me, and what's wrong with me, and what's wrong with me, and what's wrong with me, which is where most of us land. Why aren't I happy? We end up in the place where our mask breaks down, and we can't do it anymore. And we think, oh, life is meaningless. So I got these things. I'm never going to get there. Life doesn't mean. Life is this way, and people are bad, and it is not even worth it. We end up in this place. It has nothing to do with life. Wherever you land, in whatever darkness you think you are, whatever illness you think you're at, whatever place you're at, it's not about the outside world. It's between you and the distance between you and your real, true self. And I'm not talking about your real, true personality. I'm talking about your real, true self, that infinite self that we spent the first 4 or 5 weeks talking about exclusively. We're not talking about being a bigger personality. We're talking about being a bigger, infinite self, knowing the truth about who you are. She then goes into a coma, which then is what is called the clinical death, where she passes over. Literally, her body dies, right? After 5 years of only listening to the song from the artificial bird once a year for 5 years, and you know, we wait until we can't take it anymore. We are holding on to that mask with white knuckles all scraped and a face being scraped across the ground because we will not let go. And Marcus Aurelius said, fate leads those who will, and those who won't, it drags. We have to learn our lessons 1,500 times until we have our frickin' aha moment. The aha moment doesn't happen with the first lesson for anybody unless you're high, right? And if you're high, the next morning you will have forgotten it anyway, right? The aha moment comes after doing it the same frickin' upside down ass backwards way, trying to do it our way until we wake up one morning and say, you know what? I'm done. I do not have the energy to keep doing it this way anymore. And we do what is called surrender. And we don't surrender because we are wise. We surrender because we're tired. We're just so tired we can't take it anymore. After 5 years of listening to Artificial Bird that was so beautiful because you always knew what was going to come out of its mouth, it didn't upset anybody, it's perfect. Being behind that mask after 5 years, the emperor was so sick he's laying on his deathbed, and in the story they make it so clear what his deathbed is. Sumptuous bed, fabulous curtains, the ties, the gold ties that pull the curtains back. You can tell he is living in the lap of luxury. You can have all the money you want, man. And it is not going to keep you from this moment of reckoning where life is calling you to be your true self and come out of hiding, living your partial life, living your small life, living the people-pleasing life. And the problem with people-pleasing is not that you don't want to not hurt people, it's that if you are paying the price with your entire life force by keeping yourself behind a mask, not to upset people who might not understand or be afraid, that is too high of a price to pay, and according to life, it's going to push you past that point. That is not a good price to pay. You are not getting good value for your money there. He's lying on his deathbed. He cannot breathe. And what does the word spiritual mean? We say it here all the time. The Greek root of the word spiritual is to breathe. He cannot breathe. He cannot breathe life in deeply. And if you cannot breathe life in deeply, you cannot feel. You cannot feel your own life. You cannot be in your own life. He cannot breathe, and death itself is sitting on his chest, talking to him about the life he led. And he calls out in this moment, as we all do. You can call it prayer, you can call it asking for help, you can call it the first step of the 12-step programs, whatever it is. There's a moment that you call out and surrender, and his word was sing. That's what he called out, sing. But of course, the artificial bird had to be wound up in order to sing its one measly song, and there were no attendants there to wind the fake bird up. So when he said sing, nothing happened. And he's between him and death. He's moments away from his death. In his great life, there is no happiness, no life force in him. And he cries out, sing. And we call to this mask to help us. We call to our small life to fix itself. We call to our small little life and we say, come on, what's the problem? I'll do anything. And life says, take the mask off. The one thing We're so afraid to do because it feels so unsafe, because we're so afraid of what's going to come down on us. The disapproval, the rumors, the people being disappointed. You'll never find a guy. I did not want to let that voice out. So by the 5th time, I landed in the hospital 5 times. Took every allergy test there was. The first allergy test in one of the New York hospitals, you're allergic to walnuts. So I stopped walnuts. Okay, next allergy test, you're allergic to fruits with rinds on them. Okay, so I have to pull back from fruits with rinds. When you do aerobic activity. Okay, so I'm going to do aerobic activity. I'm not going to eat any watermelon or candy. Every single test told me something different. And then I was doing none of those things and walking myself to Beth Israel on the east side after a boxing session. During a boxing session, I just put my stuff down and walked out because I could feel my throat swelling again with the words that I couldn't let out, because in that moment I was angry and I had something to say to my boxing trainer, who actually was a bastard at that moment. And I wanted to say, this isn't fair. And I couldn't. As I always couldn't get the words I wanted to say out when I was mad, and I wanted to speak that I was mad so we could just deal with it and move past it, but I didn't want to bring shame on my family. But of course I didn't remember having made the decision to push my words down. Who remembers a decision you make at 3 like that? Our soul does. Soul does. And I walked myself in for the 5th and last time and checked myself into the ER. And of course, your head's like a balloon, so you go to the front of the line. Guy can have an arm hanging off, but when they see a balloon-faced person, you go to the front of the line, which was always the good thing, because everything was swelling up. And a day later, I got it. A day later, I took my soul session and said, what is up with this? I cannot keep doing this. This is too scary. And it said, make a new decision. It's time for you to start telling the truth. Not to harm people. Tell the truth, because the truth is what you're here to do. You're here to speak it, but you're here to live it. You're here to walk it. You're here to share it, and you're here to help other people get to theirs. You've got to start speaking the truth, or you'll keep landing in the hospital. She has her near-death experience, and she has her bolt of lightning. When you have a near-death experience, you don't need a soul session. Right? You're at the source, man. You can go right to the source. When we do what we do in a soul session is we go to the source. Your source, not mine, our source. Your soul is as connected to the soul of the universe. And we discover who we truly are and what stands in the way. And here's what she discovered. On her what appeared to be deathbed, but she was far from dead, I understood that at the core, our essence is made of pure love. We are pure love. Every single one of us. How can we not be if we come from the whole and return to it? This meant never being afraid of who we are. Because being love and being our true self is one and the same thing. Being the love that we are and being our true self is one and the same thing. As I experienced my biggest revelation, it felt like a bolt of lightning. I understand that merely by being the love I truly am, I would heal both myself and others. I never understood this before, and yet it seemed so obvious. If we're all one, all facets of the same whole, which is unconditional love, and she said those words don't begin to explain the tender regard of how she felt held in this unconditional love. She said, if we are all facets of this unconditional love, then of course who we are is love. I knew that was really the only purpose of life, to be ourself, to live our truth, and be the love that we are, to be ourselves, to live the truth, and to be the love that we are. And who does she meet in that energy of love? Who does she meet? Who do we meet when we have soul sessions? We meet the person who wears the black hat in our life that seems to have made us go behind the mask in the first place. And we say, hey, it's your fault. If it wasn't for you, if you loved me properly, I wouldn't be in this position I'm in now. Her father's energy comes to her. That's the beauty of the soul. At the level of the soul, everything is love. Love which created us is what we are. Her father comes to her, and what does she say? She said, I didn't have one day where I felt safe near my father because he was so strict and everything had to be so correct, and I had to be the woman he needed me to be for the community to see me the way he needed the community to see me, to show well on him. I mean, the rules, the regulations, and there he was, she said, loving me. All that bullshit of opinions and rumors and shoulds and shouldn'ts and traditions and all that stuff that ties us up in knots, gone. He was just loving her, and she was just loving him, because at the base of everything what the Course in Miracles says is entirely true. Love which created us is what we are. And what did she say? She said, in that moment that I got that my father said to me, the energy, the essence of my father said to me, you're home. She felt like she was home, embraced in the love of her father. He said, you've always been home. You always have been, you are now, and you always will be. We always are in this place. When we do what it is she said was her bolt of lightning, when we come back and realize that all we need to do is be this love we are, and we be it when we allow ourselves to be who we truly are. When that emperor called out, sing, man, when that emperor called out, sing with all his heart, we don't hit our bottom and then say, and then pray some nice little prayer. Oh, yeah, if you have a moment, Lord, would you help me? Because I really need some help. Not that kind of prayer. When we have hit bottom, we are praying with our whole heart. And when he said sing, you know the entirety of the essence of his will to live and change and do what life is calling us to do, and go with the flow instead of trying to hold it back. Everything he felt was in that word. And at that moment, the artificial bird, of course, is silent. Our mask can't help us. Our mask is the problem. Who should fly in to his window in his bedroom from the woods outside the emperor's bedroom, of course, but the living nightingale, and begin to sing, of course. And it began to sing, and death itself turned its head and turned to the living nightingale to hear this song. It was that beautiful. That's what people always said. It was that beautiful. And in the singing of the living nightingale asked for what it took back from the emperor, and death began to give it back for a song. It started to exchange everything it had taken from the emperor until it had nothing left, until death itself decided it needed to leave, and like a mist took off. And the emperor lay there absolutely blown away, as we are when we pray and we finally say, I'm ready to let go. I am ready to be who I was meant to be. I am ready to live the way life is encouraging me to live, which feels so unsafe, but is the only safe next step to take, the only healthy one. The only one, because in that living nightingale is our life force. In our true self is who we came to be. In that truth, without that mask, we are directly connected to why we're here, the source of life, who we are, our identity, our pure purpose. It unfolds. We become what we are meant to become by simply being our real self. Are people not going to like it? Yes. Not everybody's going to like it. You're not going to win the American Idol popularity contest. It's not going to happen. But at that moment, you realize that shit doesn't matter anyway. Because the price you've been paying is so not worth it that you're willing to let go of that bullshit popularity of not ruffling any feathers and just come out and live fearlessly and do and be what you came here to do and be. And even if you don't know what the hell that is, at least you're standing in your own shoes. At least when you open your mouth, what comes out is what you really feel. At least when you're in the moment, being what you are, you're there with yourself. You haven't left yourself behind. You're with yourself. You're for yourself. You're in your own corner. And so the emperor says, what do you want? I'll give you anything. Here he is again negotiating. I'll give you anything. I'll give you anything. And the living nightingale said, I've only ever wanted your tears. I've wanted you to open your heart. That's what it's saying. Our true self wants to come out. It only wants us to open our heart and live in the world in a way that we feel connected to the world and alive in the world and enjoy in the world. That's all it wants. It doesn't want a pound of flesh. It wants our happiness. Weeks ago, we talked about life's goal for you is your perfect happiness, and we understand that perfect means your wholeness. There is no happiness unless the whole truth of you is here. Your true self. When life calls us, it calls us to be bigger, not smaller. Calls us into our greatness, to remember who we are, not who we were or others wanted us to be. We get that. We know that all too well. The nightingale said, the living nightingale, just let me come to you. Let me sing to you. Let me come to you and tell you about what's going on in your kingdom. Let me go out into the world and find out and bring all that information back to you. That's our soul. Let me help you live in this world. Let me help you walk in this world. Let me be your intuition. Let me be your guidance. Let me lead you into the life you're meant to lead. That's all it wants. And what does it want in return? For God's sakes, it doesn't want you to turn over the lease to your co-op. All it wants is squeak out a couple of tears. It wants you to just be yourself and be in your life and stop fighting to hold on to a mask that we wind up, it's so old, that plays the same old tune, not to ruffle anybody's feathers. And you know what? It's absolutely right. And here's the very cool thing about this. She had her experience as an NDE, a near-death experience, and I kept thinking, I don't want that to happen to me. I'm very clear. That is not my story, not my story. I do not want to go there to have that experience. I'd love to have a deeper experience. Not that way. I was so abundantly clear. She did that for us. She did that. Let her have done that for you. I like to piggyback on other people's, kind of painful, trying times. So, so maybe I don't have to go through it, right? And here's what's interesting. When is the instant of her release? The last thing I'm going to say, when was the instant of her release? When was the holy instant of her release? The moment she remembered and realized who she truly was, connected to the source of life, one with it, living from it, coming from it, returning to it, never having left it. And in that moment, with that realization, realizing if she's just her true self, then everything in her life, purpose, destiny, love, money, everything in her life will unfold before her because she is absolutely connected to the truth of who she is, and she is expressing it as her true self, the living nightingale. And the emperor agreed to those terms, so that the next morning when the attendants came into his bedroom to perhaps prepare him for burial, he was bustling up and around, and he wished them a good morning. She knew Anita Morjani when she had this experience and returned to this presence, this energy, this consciousness here on earth, in a body but beyond her body. She said, at that moment, I knew my cancer was history. When is our holy instant of release? When does a way of life that work begins? In this moment. All the emperor said was sing. We only have to want to come out from behind who we're not and connect to who we are. And that becomes your holy moment of release. Enough said.